Today's a mixed bag. There are books that I liked that were mediocre and that I didn't really care for. Oh boy, there's a lot of books that I'm going to be reviewing today. You guys ready? I've got a pile right here, and I've got some others that I don't have the physical books for right now, or they were on my Nook. Let's start with some of the bad ones and some of the good ones. We'll mix it all up. I'm going to start off with a bang, The Other Slavery. So I tend to read a lot of books on different forms of slavery, modern day and from the past. And this one was more from the past. This book specifically is about the slavery that took place from, it gives you like the entire history from once explorers landed on the Americas. For the first 100 pages, I was really sucked into this, actually. I really loved it. And then after that, I got sleepy. I started to I don't really like reading this because it's hard. This was a difficult one, and I'm going to tell you why. It was packed with information that was both really good and very informative to where it was too much. I learned a lot of things I hadn't known. So I always knew that the slavery that took place in South America was just horrible. But this gives you journal accounts of how these people were treated. And then even people that came from Spain that were trying to stop the slavery because they found out how horrible it was. This is mainly about the slaves that you find out suffered in South America and North America, the people that were indigenous to those areas, how they were treated. And my word, there were some awful explanations of some of the things that went on. It was gruesome. This is so gruesome that there is something that was depicted from the later part of the book into the late 1800s, how people in the New Mexico area were treated. And going into the Californias, Colorado, into that whole area. And it was just so disturbing that I can't get the image. My mind made this image and I can't. It hurt. There are so many gruesome accounts of it's really rough. I gave this 3 stars and it could have been 4 stars, but because it was just too much information, it did go into explaining a little bit about how modern day slavery still exists. This was very good, but at the same time, too much. Too much. Too much for my heart. And I've read a lot of gruesome accounts of slavery. Just some of the torturous things done. I mean, even in the beginning, they talk about the branding done on their faces. How demeaning that would be for a person. Okay, we have a lot of heavy books here today. Let's get right to it. James, okay. This was the #1 book I wanted to read this year. So this is a fan fiction. That's how I'm gonna explain it. This is the top book of last year and everyone adored it. Now, I'm going to be fair. The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, I read it at the beginning of this year. I've told you I did not enjoy it. There were parts that were okay. This book, it took parts. I was told I didn't have to read Huckleberry Finn to read this. And I disagree. I feel like it's very important that you read that book because then you can learn some of the characters and side by side understand it, because for this book, he changed how some of the characters acted to make a funny situation horrible instead. I understand you're going to get a different perspective because one is told from the perspective of a white boy and this one is told from the perspective of a slave man. I really liked how it was written, actually. And I got sucked in. I read this very quickly. This was a day read for me. But I have a problem when people take famous books that were classics. I'm going to recreate this character and give them a voice. I loved the voice they gave to Jim, who is now saying his name is James. But one thing that was weird to me, and I did some research after reading this book because I needed proof. There is a whole portion throughout this book where Caribbean islands and the African countries, and when they're learning English, the way their accents combined with everyone else's accent made this accent that is known as a slave accent. However, in James, he is an educated man. He knows how to read and write, something that a lot of slaves were not allowed to pick up on. And some did, but many did not. So James, he makes it seem like this slave accent is fake. And throughout it, he'll tell other slaves you could drop that accent now. Let me see if that's a real thing. If there were actual people out there in slavery faking to make themselves look more stupid for the slave owners so that way they would be treated well. And I couldn't find any proof of it. And I was really trying to find it because I found that fascinating. But all I could find that there was a slave accent made from all the different accents. That bothered me a lot. And I was talking to my husband about it, told him all about this book when we went for a walk. And he's like, let's look up on that. So we both looked it up. Now, James, when I read Huckleberry Finn, the character and how they describe him is very different from how they describe him here. So that I thought that was weird. And I can't even say how they make him out because it's a spoiler. These books didn't match up. But James, I feel this is a good way to learn how a lot of slaves are treated. It's just a sad book, very well written, but I have a hard time with fan fiction. And that's what this is. I'm sorry. This is fan fiction. This is not original. I would love if the author wrote a book about a slave man named James, but not the one from Huckleberry Finn, and wrote this story with his own characters without using some of the actual characters in it. That would have made me like it more, to be honest with you. That's really what held me back. That brings me to a better book. The Wing Feather Saga. I had been reading these books. They're kind of thick. Been reading these to my sons and my husband too. During dinner time, after we eat, I read a chapter or two or three. And this is the last book. And I sobbed at the end while reading it. And my husband was crying before I started crying. And then he cried more because I was crying. This was very well written. This is so much better than the first book. I don't know if it was the second or the third book, but one of those I liked a whole lot. And it might have been the second book that I really, really loved. This book was probably my second favorite of the series. It's a middle grade fantasy book. It's about 3 children growing up in an area where there are creatures taking over and they're kidnapping these children. They don't know what's happening to them. And eventually their family has to go traveling to try to rescue different people. There's someone called Nag the Nameless, and he's a treacherous person that's in charge of all these issues going on. It's funny. The first book is just ridiculous, to be honest with you. The humor, it's just very kiddie, but then it gets so much better. So the humor in this, there's a lot of it, but then there's also a lot of sad things. This was kind of deep. There is talk about the maker and why isn't, in this book specifically, why isn't he doing anything to help us? Christian aspect without it being Christian, but the author is Christian. When you read this is for everyone. I thought it was very nice and it tore me up. Picnic in Provence. This was for a book club that I'm a part of. This was the month, which I'm probably going to skip this month's actually, because I have other books I really want to focus on this month. But Picnic in Provence, I was like, oh, I love the idea of living in France and cooking in a French way. So this has some recipes here and there. Memoir about a woman. She and her husband live in France. She was born in New Jersey. She married a man who's French. They live in Paris, actually, Paris. She gets pregnant. So she's talking all about what her life was like living in France as a pregnant woman, as she's in her late 30s, and as someone that gave birth at 39 to my last child a couple years ago. I could relate to some of the things in here, but it was very fascinating at times. But there were certain things that she said that I'm like, that doesn't sit well with me. She was trying to connect to her child. Her child preferred her husband. So there is a lot of stuff about motherhood throughout this. This is a very experienced book that her experience. So if you want to read her experience about what it was like for her becoming a mom in France, definitely read this. Couldn't get into this book. It wasn't bad. It was okay. The rest of the books that I'm going to talk about are Christian books, just so if you're here for the Christian books, stay here. If you're like, oh, I don't really want to hear about that, I understand if you snip it right here. That's fine. Practicing the Way. This was, how could I say this? I started out really enjoying the things in here. There are a lot of great quotes in here. There's a lot of wisdom. I appreciated the things that he stated. This challenged me in different ways. The name Christian was not a term that was used, actually. It was a term used to kind of make fun of people that believed in Jesus, and that the people that were Christians called themselves followers of the way. So this is how to practice the way. And the reason why they say the way is because Jesus says that he's the way, the truth, and the life, and that no one can come to the Father except through him. How we can learn from what they called Rabbi Jesus, and they explained what he would have gone through to be able to call the people to be his disciples, and why they would just stop everything and go after him. And it was very good because it gave a lot of historical situations that you could understand in modern telling, so you could get it. How you could understand the gospel a little bit better. But throughout this book, he quotes a million people. He's like, oh, according to this person. And there's not a lot of the gospel, and there's not enough scripture throughout this. It's like, I couldn't get into it just because of that. I liked a lot of it, but a lot of it I was like, okay, here's another person's saying. And it's not like that's bad. I enjoy reading people's quotes. But if you're going to tell people how to practice the way more, I want to hear more of the way and his words. Okay, so it's been a while since I did any Amish books for you. Last month, my sister-in-law gave me a stack of books and she's like, I know you like Amish stories. Here's an Amish trilogy. And she said, you want to try it? I said, sure, I'll read it. I didn't know what I was getting into. So this is the stack. This is by Cindy Woodsmall. I have read a couple of her Amish books in the past, but it's been a while. When the Heart Cries is the first book. This is a crazy, sad book. The first book starts off with this girl named Hannah. She has this boyfriend. He's a Mennonite. She's Amish. So that could be a problem because they have different lifestyles, even though a lot of people get them confused often. Mennonites, well, this guy is a more plain Mennonite. So there's different factions of Mennonite. I'm a Mennonite. I have tattoos, piercings, I don't wear a head covering, but I'm a Mennonite. This Mennonite that she's dating, he wears more plain clothes. He isn't allowed certain things. Like he's not really allowed to watch sports or have TV. So there's a lot of rules for his church. So he's very simple, but the Amish are even more simple. So she is not really supposed to be seeing this guy. And they become engaged, but at one point, she's going home, and this happens right in the beginning of the book. And I'm giving you this as a warning because this seems like a very nice love story. This girl right away goes through a horrible, traumatic situation without like crazy details in the book, but she is so traumatized by it and she doesn't have the support she needs to get through it. So she has a little bit of support. It causes everyone to, except for like 2 people really, to separate from her and not want to talk to her. She is looked down upon for this situation and it's horrible. Like she should not be looked down for it. So I'm warning you, this is heavy. There's accidents that happen. There are separation. She has to leave at one point because it gets to be too devastating for her. And so then the second book is about her trying to heal when the morning comes. It's about her healing. She goes somewhere else to find a way to take what has happened to her and move forward. But she also has where she meets new people. And this is like weird because this whole book jumps 2 years. And I was like, I feel like there were some things that should have happened because of what the first book said. And it seemed like there wasn't investigations for things. And it was just weird. It was slow. This one was boring. Crazy and very good book. Sad, boring, good book. So the third book was good. This is where she ends up having to go back home. She tries to learn about forgiveness and what that looks like for her family and how she could move forward with her life after going through her healing. It's a good series, but it was depressing. That first book, I couldn't stop reading it. The first book was just, I finished it in a day because I just couldn't stop. I couldn't put it down. Okay, last book is Gospel Mom. This is another theology book that I decided to read. Gospel Mom is to try to encourage mothers. It's how we can find our identity as women from the stem of Eve and what that looks like for us. And as a mother, what does that look like for you? But then like there's this whole big section talking about gray areas, saying like, oh, maybe your friends do Halloween and maybe you don't, and how you can deal with different things about what one mom might do and how you react to it. And it's just all about gray areas. And I, again, wanted the gospel. Barely any scriptures in this book. How to live as a gospel mom. Dig into the gospel. This is written by 2 women. They do say something like that, but Gospel Mom was mediocre. I could have passed on this, honestly. I had wanted to read this for a while. Could have skipped it. I could have DNF'd it, honestly, but I didn't because it was a quick read. But basically, it's just to teach you not to judge others in a harsh way, to be caring. This is something they said. We all come from different upbringings and different ways of life, and so we're all going to interpret things in a different way. We're all going to have different callings and different motivations. Well, guys, I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for staying here. If you watched this whole thing, thank you for that. And if you watch parts, thank you for that too. I'm just glad to have the interactions I have, and I enjoyed reading. Again, this one, I'm sorry, there were some not so great books, but there are some good ones too. All right, thank you, bye.